Hello and welcome everybody. This is Creator Spotlight, our conversation with content creators and amazing people who do epic things with live videos. I'm your host, Anya. Welcome to the show. Today, we have a very exciting show and guest, but first, I just wanted to let you know that we are running this show on Restream Studio, and if you are thinking about starting to run professional live videos and series on your social channels all at the same time, you might as well start right here at restream.io/studio. Today, we're talking about live streaming political campaigns and engaging community on social web. My guest today is Mia Fermindoza. She is a technical director at Friends of Bernie Sanders. Mia, welcome to the show.
Anya, what's up? Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me today on the show.
That's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we have a lot of people in the chat saying hello. It's great to see you guys. Make sure you share, you say hello to us if you want to ask any question from Mia or from myself. Please feel free to do so. We have a quick question for you guys. Just real quick here. I'm really interested to learn if you guys watch political content on social media. Please let us know in the comments if you are consuming it as a viewer. And of course, if you are streaming live content as a political organization or for some kind of like political related cause, we would like to hear from you as well. Let us know, share your experience, and we'll try to share some tips and wisdom that Mia has from her experience with Bernie Sanders' campaign. So, of course, let's go ahead and get just straight into this because there's so much to unpack today. I would like to go ahead and get started with kind of an overview of how important has live streaming been to Bernie Sanders' campaign, Bernie for President 2020. How big was a part that it played in your social media strategy? In general?
My favorite question and set of questions to open and nerd out about with you, Anya. So when I think about the environment of campaigning in today's age, in 2020, 2021 and beyond, when I think about the tools that are available to the average voter, and you connect that with campaigning and understanding how all of that has become very reliant and related to each other, it became very clear early on that live streaming was about the depth and connectivity and accessibility that you were able to give an increasingly, very online voting world.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And of course, these days we are looking at generations of people who are basically grew up consuming most of their content through social media. Like this is their source. It's not TV anymore. It's not anything else. Like this is where they get their news. This is where they get their communication. That's where communities are being built. So why do you think that the ability to live stream across multiple platforms was important for the campaign versus just sticking to one platform?
So for folks who don't know, my background is, I think, very similar in a lot of trajectories of the mid 2000 teens, where when our phones got better at video, it became important to think about where people go on their phone now. It's not so much, there was still inherent value and community being built around, photos and communities around that, but it became very quickly and very clear that the cheaper that technology got, we would need to start making a social kind of sharing over video as a platform. And so naturally with broadcasting and competing with that sort of ecosystem that was suddenly starting to thrive, we had great friends at Twitch, like all of these things coming together, like meeting readers and audiences in the communities that they have formed became number one. And those communities are forming all the time on different platforms. So that was something that we wanted to always inject into our conception of things from every job I've ever had, whether it was like doing originals, for sort of social news journalism and creating the craziest live stream concepts. At the time, kind of everything was very much on the table for the first time. Like you could have a show about an ant farm, it would get millions of views, watch the watermelon pop from the rubber bands, and you realize, okay, people are bringing in that kind of creativity in new ways and platforms they're already on.
This is amazing. Yeah, that's very true. Just to acknowledge a couple of people from the community, I see Philip here says all my news is now through social media, which is the common situation, right? Like most of us are. This is how we consume the information. Yeah, it's really interesting that, thanks for sharing your background. It's like really helps people to understand where you're coming from, and like what brought you into the Friends of Bernie Sanders. That's actually going to be my good next question for you. Like, how did you start with Friends of Bernie Sanders? How did you start working on campaigns? Like, what led you into that career?
This is such a fun question because I feel at times throughout the last cycle, which happens to be it was my first foray into the political sphere. Before that, it was news editorial. So, had always tried to be behind the camera. Went from photography and photography editorial over to social video very quickly. I was one of the earliest production studio fellows at Now This, and for the first time we had to create a space that was capable of scaling, bits and pieces of digestible content, sometimes about complicated things. And understand that the people who are looking for, like what Philip was saying, if you're on a platform to get your news, is that platform determining a type of behavior? Like, are you on it for a few seconds and then you're gone? Are you looking to see what your friends might have been saying about this? So you have to think about how you package the information or what people's takeaways often need to be, depending on where you're putting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a comment from Scott here. Really interesting interview. Did I miss any talk about the amazing Bernie memes that have happened since the inauguration? I have to admit here for Scott and everybody else watching that I was that close to choosing the mittens meme for the background of our image, like for the thumbnail. But then I was like, you know what? It's going to put a really, really big timestamp on this content, on this video interview, and I wanted it to be a little bit more evergreen. But what are your thoughts on the mittens situation? Like, how is the campaign and like social media team and live streaming team is kind of thinking about it these days?
Listen, the moment of global joy that created, and that allowed for a guy like Bernie to be able to raise money for working people throughout that moment of joy. I mean, that was the takeaway, right? That was like just something simple, something that is you look at that and that's so him, right?
Yeah.
It was amazing, and I think thank you to everyone who partook in that joy or like had their own creative take on it, because a lot of hungry people are being fed right now, and times are really hard out here. So.
That is amazing. Yeah, like so I've seen all kinds of interpretations of that theme, and like it just doesn't get old, right? Like it continues to be funny. So that's also another wonderful example of the burst of creativity. Like people got so creative. They Photoshop that image into all kinds of things, from movies to like brands, like companies use that to kind of like elevate the mood of their community and audience. So it was just such a moment of creativity that people experienced and like decided to partake. So that was really amazing. So another question that I have for you is if you can share any specific examples of when you were working on Bernie Sanders campaigns, of how you were able to make small events or like small gatherings on social media platforms into big community events with the help of live streaming. I know you had a couple of specific examples that you could help us to see and point other people who are working in that similar space and how they could potentially approach it.
Absolutely. So, as I would always sort of place the Restream resource, the tool, the power of this tool in like a turnkey solution for some of the most basic things, right? Like, let's say you're trying to put on a live event. You're trying to obviously engage not just a global community, but multiple specific communities. Might be Facebook groups, right? A lot of political campaigning still happens on Facebook. And so it was important to us that how do we turnkey solution, make sure that our 5 partner or dozen partner organizations are getting this in their library. And so when you're trying to organize these kinds of events at the scale and pace of a presidential campaign, even, you know, a grassroots campaign is no different. You are trying to run a schedule and usually trying to chase a window of time with your candidate or with your you know, principal. That means you are, what I did was I tried to amass almost a new kind of address book where I'm like, are you in our Restream? Are we linked up? Did you send me all the key information and everything? I mean, that started to just become the standard in all of these coordinating threads and emails. So, you know, that I feel like led to a really great example of when we were pushing for Biden and getting people out to vote at his events on the road. We were able to say, hey, like, bring me your feed, you know, talk to their team, bring me what you got. And I've got the daisy chain going on already because all of these folks are switched on. It was just a matter of going through the workflow of making sure the green lights were all there. But that was like the new kind of back-end networking that made it possible to do this all the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing to hear because yeah, when you think about live streaming as not only exposure or reach, but also as a communication tool, like that really changes your perspective, right? Like this is the opportunity for you to capture people who are part of the community, who are interested in what you're doing and in your work. And they don't have to be passive viewers, right? Like luckily live streaming has a powerful interactive element to it. So you can include those people into the conversation. And this is, this is very different from most other ways of communicating with the audience. And then kind of like nicely transitions to the question that I had for you. If you were to compare live streaming in terms of reach, engagement, interactive communication aspect with engagement of videos on demand, so pre-recorded content or traditional TV content or television, right? Like how would you compare the two? And what are your thoughts on that kind of like balancing the two or giving preference to one?
Right. You know, much of what we try to do in terms of, you know, the stories that we tell or the content that we're trying to make often is encouraging people to take some kind of sincere action, right? Some kind of a political engagement. And I know that's something we all, in all of these debriefs in the past year, that's something that we, you know, throw around. But, you know, VOD, there's nothing quite like being able to, for example, make use of graphics and a leaderboard to show, you know, that people are donating to your cause, right? That's something that we try to bring in all the time.
It happens, no worries.
The value that the streaming community has created for that connection with people directly, right? Like calling out participants, calling out subscribers, you know, that's the same kind of, it was interesting to see that happen as a show of your political will, as a show of your your commitment to want to support something. And so with VOD, it's hard to feel that depth, right? Yeah. When you're streaming and you're connecting like we are right now, it's much deeper than if you were able to just choose whenever you wanted to tune in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that feeling of presence, that this is happening right now, with all the consequences of that, including, you know, like the crazy sirens, you know, playing in the background to support your argument or to like reiterate your point. I mean, all of that creates this feeling of presence, right? Like that creates that sensation that, all right, Mia is here, she's with me, we're actually talking. This is real. This is not polished. This is not edited. And I think this is one of the most powerful, aside from interactive and this ability to include your community, your viewers into the conversation. I think this is the most powerful element, that authenticity, that opportunity to be vulnerable partly, but also be real. So that's, I think, I do believe that political campaigns and political leaders should completely embrace that. Like it sounds like such a great way to break that wall between like their persona, their image and their real heart and soul, so to say, right? So that's yeah, that's definitely, it's an interesting kind of like look into this. So when it comes to live streaming and how it helps to connect with communities, let's talk a little bit about how hard to reach communities, maybe undecided voters, swing states and regions, people who are typically politically passive, not necessarily, you know, very, very outgoing and very vocal about their opinions. Do you think live streaming helps to connect with those groups?
You know, absolutely. You know, as sort of an outsider into the political space, you know, coming sort of from the news and storytelling and docuseries type of work, what became very clear, like almost immediately, was that we are trying to buy a lot of the same airtime, right? A lot of the same sort of attention from like in a race of how many candidates were there. We had to be able to say, okay, can we do it, number one, consistently, and use the regional networks that are very inherent, right, with running races. Your network and understanding of the voter, I think, is informed by, you know, how many groups are you working with just in this state? How many people are going to be able to attend a virtual event that, you know, should connect nationally? But we are trying to get people at the time, people to attend the event and then also see it everywhere on social media, right? You are tuning the frequency of what you're trying to broadcast and your goals into, okay, is this possible to, can we actually see the numbers at the end where like more people attended this event because we made use of advertising on the platforms. We made use of targeting the stream, you know, for instance, to et cetera, using our, you know, emails and other tools. It took, even if you were tuning in a non-swing state into an event that was a very big deal state, you kind of felt the urgency even from afar because you were able to be at the event. And that's what the senator, I think, has always really pushed for. You don't need to rely on the mainstream media logic. You don't need to just get prime time, you know, to be able to speak to the people. Live streaming was that solution for us, you know.
That's so amazing. Yeah, that's very good to hear. For those who haven't seen much of your live streams, of your work, could you describe how your events and how, like, what is a typical live stream for you guys? Is this Bernie Sanders kind of like answering questions? Is it him doing the speech? And you just guys broadcast that so people could watch it if they cannot physically be present at his at the place where he's speaking? Like, what kind of specific like, examples so people could envision like what that live streaming for Bernie Sanders campaign is looking like?
Absolutely. So, and you're talking like pre-presidential, right? Leading up to.
Ideally, yeah, presidential. And like, if you can actually give examples of what was the presidential race live streaming examples looking like versus what you guys are doing now, that would be really interesting to compare as well.
Perfect. That's a great seg because, you know, you sort of have to look at both sides of that. During the campaign, it was a matter of, can we bring every event and every speech and every time he did a town hall? You know, he was so good at that. The fireside chat style of his events really allowed us to say, people can enjoy this at home and tune in from wherever they are, because the events are never going to be the same because the questions are going to be different. So we were like, okay, boom, always have the live unit, you know, small team, be able to be close. And a lot of other candidates were also doing the same. So during that time, it was very straightforward. Like, the reason why I think we only did really well in the just chatting category on Twitch was because there wasn't actually a lot of back and forth at the time. It was people were tuning in to want to be part of his rallies. They were excited when it was close to or near their own where they were living. And then afterwards, especially like in the lead up to get those swing states for the Democrats, Georgia was a great example. Check out our live stream recently that we did most recently to get the two Democratic candidates victory seats in Georgia. We were able to bring together local leaders, activist groups from all over Georgia, and boost, that entire like social moment for them. I often have to remind myself that the work of many others built up Bernie's reach, from the 2016 campaign and on. And it became so important for us to leverage and use that platform to bring out and change local races too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's just such a great example of how powerful the tool can be and how it builds momentum, right? Like how it starts somewhere. You guys were also streaming in 2016, I believe, right? Like, so you were already experimenting with live content at that time, and then it just kept adding on. Is that right?
Yes, I would expect you would sort of see that the behavior that people knew that they could tune into Bernie's channels and know that he will probably stream more frequently than the others, right?
That is amazing. I have a couple more really fun questions about how Bernie Sanders feel on camera, and we'll play just a quick intermission and keep moving on. For those who just joins us right now, my guest today is Mia Fermindoza. She's technical director at Friends of Bernie Sanders. We are talking about how live streaming could be a powerful tool for grassroots space, as well as political campaigns of any level and any scale, and how live streaming can help political candidates connect with their community and encourage them in participation in political process in the era of social web. So we kind of talked about how live streaming was huge and how it is really helping to galvanize the whole community around even different democratic elections, different level of elections, and how it can build up since 2016, and that momentum helped to grow. I am really curious how Bernie Sanders himself feels. What is his kind of like approach to live streaming? How does he feel to be on camera? How he feels about being live, on social media platforms. He is, let's face it, from a slightly different generation. Most of his time, live streaming and social media was not a thing. So what's his what's his feeling? Like, what's his inner world when it comes to live streaming?
So from the perspective of someone who has covered him with the sort of the same exact questions on a few years ago, you look back at it's no secret, you look back at the archives and all the old viral footage of him engaging in the community in like a very direct way, being a messenger of authenticity and trust and like not too much fanfare. That I think has always been the energy and what we try to carry into our work. The ability for him to answer questions, something that is so the currency of, streaming communities everywhere, engaging with that audience. He does that at a certain level to him where he can see the questions come in, and he'll be able to answer them. He'll be able to it's more than just a video conference, even though I think maybe the bones of it might be that in the imagination, right? But there is a sense of someone who will give their first name, like any commenter will give them their first name and where they're tuning in from that state or something. And it's crazy to be able to say, hey, Mia out in Maryland, how are you? Great question. And then knowing that he does that every week and will show the question. It's simple stuff. Sometimes obviously I've seen much more sophisticated methodologies, but I think that's what's exciting, is the very directness, as we said, the depth, the authenticity.
Yeah, and these days, the recent streams that I have seen, he's very comfortable. That's why I asked this question. I was curious if this is something that he's struggling with, but he looks like he's perfectly fine. Yeah, he's ready. He's glad to hear the questions, and I'm sure the chat gets busy, right? I'm sure it's kind of running because so many people want to clarify something and want that interaction. Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of questions here from the audience that I would love to take. This one from Lawson is really good. What are streams going forward going to look like? So basically, what are your plans for future live streaming for Bernie Sanders?
Oh, wow, that is a huge question. I hope, I don't know if you guys remember one stream that did really, really well that stood out, I think, because it got good coverage, was he had a great fireside chat with, at the time, our campaign manager, Faz. And I think that was an exciting change from the candidate that you saw at podium, right, in a very official manner. And then all of a sudden we were scaling it over to a very intimate conversation in the living room. And I know that that was a very enjoyable experience for not only, I think, the senator, but for everybody tuning in. I would like to see more of that. I can't say for sure what will happen. You know, it's always going to be up to him and what he feels is important and what he wants to do.
Yeah.
But I would like to see more of that, more engaging one-on-one, like what AOC is doing and has been doing really well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, I think it would be really exciting. It's really interesting to see how much say Senator Sanders has in how his live streaming interactions are going, right? Like it sounds like he does choose the things that are more natural for him and also what he believes serves the community the best. So, and you guys are, of course, supporting that with your technological abilities. So that's really lovely. Lawson here kind of like follows up. Love how easy a personal touch can be with live streaming. This is very true. It is very easy to convert something into a much more personal experience if you're streaming. And Lawson also says, absolutely agree. Those are the best types of streams, 100%. Speaking about easy, I'm curious to know how easy was live streaming for you guys on the end of those people who are kind of like behind the camera, not on camera, when it comes to live streaming and when it comes to tools like Restream. When you guys were just first experimenting with this type of content, how easy was it for you to get started with Restream and kind of like get the ball rolling?
I feel like I stand on the shoulders of many engineering and technical giants, because when I tell you that creating an in-house workflow and system, doing it at cost and cheap and easy, basically, I think it took, I don't know, a week at most, all told, right? To think through how we're going to lay out the in-house like studio and like actual, place where we're going to be filming, but taking that to a place where we bring in all types of media. It should be as easy as it is for any creator these days, right? To have a set of tools available and at hand that allow you to bring in content from another screen, things like that. Engage people, show a leaderboard, like all of these tools that I think people have gone to great lengths to like create very beautiful and sophisticated things. We were just like, okay, like how do we translate this into the kind of, into what our principal is needing right now, what our organization needs right now, what our goals are, right? Yeah. Being able to have a tool, for instance, that connects our fundraising tool to a graphics tool and connect that. So it's like, in a video game, right, it might be different types of in-game money or whatever, but we're looking at real voting donations or real voter donations.
Was live streaming helpful in when it comes to boosting the donation and the level of participation in terms of financial support?
Yes. Oh man. The Strokes concert that we did, just building again a lot on existing momentum at the time, of course, but I don't think I remember the last time seeing a sort of fundraising event that incorporated the very, very best of, watching someone play a video game online or watching someone comment on something online. It was just, you saw people hit over $80,000 in donations in less than a 2-hour live stream, because they were saying to them, I was one of them being like, I'll put in $27 and like try to get on the leaderboard, or outbidding people or out donating each other by $1. Just really fun stuff. It was just so fun to see, to be as experimental as we were able to be around that live event.
I love your like kind of gamification approach to this, because this is very engaging and this is very smart to think about things like fundraising and engaging and looking at those numbers from the gaming perspective, right? Like this is fun. Like we can reach that goal. We can pass through that level. We can level up, right? Like so that's a really cool way to look at this. I'm gonna take another question from the audience here. Philip is asking. Let me display this real quick. What does a typical day of an event stream look like? So I guess it's going to be more question for you. Like, how does your typical day on the event when the day when you have to stream, when you get ready for live streaming on social is looking like for you?
In the sort of remote way that we've been doing things now, there is a lot of back-end work from the rest of the team to get any of the other participants that are going to be joining the event together. So, we're not asking I use Twitch a lot because it's the most popular way people have been doing this, but obviously we don't have, not everyone is yet have an account on Twitch, so we can sort of create that kind of interpersonal connectivity for an event. But, our reliance on Zoom means there is the first phase of preparation, which is, doing all the tech and production stuff, making sure that people are going to be fine and look good. But the second phase of that being, can we coordinate like a show? Like, can we produce a package around this through like being smart about what questions we want to answer, like where we're going to go thematically through all of that. It's looking like me on the technical end, switching on all of the keys and streams and making sure it's going to be dispersed to the right people once we're live. It's going to be checking in on people who don't always stream as much as we do to say, why don't you try using Restream? It's at low cost. And then now, like, I can count how many people that use Restream because they know it's the easiest way to work with us, right? Give a little bit of information and you can switch it on, and all we just have to say is, yeah, we'll take the stream tomorrow, today, whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for mentioning that. That's really good to hear. It's good stuff. And I'm seeing people are actually agreeing with you big time about the leaderboards, and Donald leaderboards always kill it and drive more. So true. I do have another question for you about how do you measure the results of your live streams? Like, what constitutes a good live stream for you? What kind of metrics do you guys look at in order to understand if you're doing well or if there's something that you guys need to improve?
Yes. So I think for us, it always made sure that if our goal was to amplify or raise funds to support organizations, then it mattered that we were looking at those first, right? How much action we were able to create, sincere action out of this event. Secondly, of course, is if there are changes to, our responsiveness, for example, to current events is really important. And like, when I think through, when I think through I guess this goes back to just being able to do things very quickly, but
the engagement metric sounds like, when we at least look at our live streams, like the engagement is definitely the key, right? It's not necessarily how many views we got, but how many people actually participated, how many comments we got, how many people liked or shared that stream. So something that was actionable, that drove people to take an action other than just passively watch or participate in some way, right? So for us, those are always the metrics that we're looking at. And just in general, like the quality of stream, it's always good to go back and be like, all right, so next time we should we're kind of all over the place here, right? Like let's work on our flow. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at. So it's interesting to see how you guys are approaching. There's a question here from Anastasia. She's saying, sorry, just joining. No worries. This is the beauty of life. You join whenever you can. And she's asking, did you guys mention if you are using Studio or streaming software when you're using Restream? So great question. If you guys are streaming from the studio space or you're using a different encoder and then rebroadcast it through Restream.
That's a great question. At first, when we were still able to travel, we were bringing everything sort of old new school, which was a mini TriCaster. I still like to do things the physical way of being able to change the view and everything, and that was coming in through its own encoder, right to Restream. Then before, I would say even before the pandemic started, but when lockdown really hit, we were just bringing everything through OBS, and then being able to add a couple other elements like hovercast into the mix to get those graphics and that fundraising tool connected.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, the studio is probably the easiest way to get started when it comes to live streaming. But of course, if you are looking for like more sophisticated effects and multiple camera ingest and stuff like that, OBS is a great way to connect the two. Like luckily, Restream integrates with a ton of encoders, and it works very smoothly. So you can still get that multi-platform reach while using some other encoders. But I'm a big fan of Studio. I don't know how to stream any other way because I want it simple. When I open OBS, I'm getting really confused. So that's a great opportunity for people who are not necessarily don't possess that expertise and don't have that much experience in live video editing. Studio is a good starting point. I'm seeing some more questions here. Ethan says, what information do you give to guests before a stream? I guess that's a question for me. So what I typically do is I definitely make sure that we coordinate the time. I definitely coordinate the topic. So I want to make sure that my guests know what we're going to be talking about. A couple of days before the stream, I like to share the questions that I have for the guest. But then there is always this surprise element, or the beauty of live streaming element. It's the questions from you guys, like this one from Ethan. So those questions is not something that I can prepare in advance. And I always try to make sure that my guest understands that there will be questions from the community. But yeah, there is it's an open conversation. You guys are all welcome to join and add whatever you guys want to our conversation. Questions, comments, thoughts, anything at all. We're talking to Mia Fermindoza. She is technical director of Friends of Bernie Sanders, and we're talking about live streaming political campaigns and working with live video on social media in grassroots space. All right, wrapping up here, just a couple of questions for you to share your knowledge, your expertise with people who are just starting live streaming in the grassroots space or political campaign space. What are some key takeaways or learnings that you had that you would like to recommend to people who are just starting today? Like, what would you wish you knew when you were just starting and learning that you would like other people to know about live streaming?
The first would definitely be, as a lover of the production process and the more technical way of rigging things and putting things together, but essentially building out, your workflow. It's okay if the first is pretty crappy, right? Like the first couple kind of need to be pretty rough, and that's good because the tools make it right now just so easy to improve with each new event. And so there's no loss at all in trying to see when something will work. Who cares if like 2 or 1 person or 3 people and 2 of them are your parents tuning in to what you're trying to create? What goes to show is if you are making 100% effort to connect with your community, and they understand what you're able to give them, if you are a messenger of authentic information, if you are trying to, right? Like if you're in the gaming space, it's always been about seeing and listening to what your community is saying. And I think that means while you're growing and building, you might take a couple of hits because you think something was going to work better, but actually your community has always been there all along telling you what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah, listening is the most important skill of any creator, right? It's not necessarily the message that you have, which is very important, it's critical, but it's also that two-way street, right? Like the communication and getting that feedback and looping it into how you approach moving forward. That's great advice. Thank you so much for that. I think to wrap this up, I would love to hear your thoughts. It doesn't necessarily have to be like official Friends of Bernie Sanders policy, but more of your thoughts based on your experience. How do you think live streaming will play out in the future elections and voter participation? Do you think it's going to play a more central role as we move forward with future elections?
Absolutely. What did, the past few months show us, right, is that if you are able to take disparate communities from around the world and bring them a moment of literal time that they're coming together and enjoying with each other, then that is in a lot of ways organizing. That is voter engagement. We have to take ourselves away from this idea that voting engagement, it's really important for that to be in the field and in person. But what happens when we have come to this place in building relationships where we've challenged ourselves to say, what is preventing me from having a really strong relationship with it's sort of a virtual space, right? Technology is going to get better. We might have VR streaming as an incredibly accessible tool. I think the potential of connecting in that way, if we have to sort of continue.
And looks like Mia is losing her connection. Just real quick, I'm going to, in the meantime, acknowledge some of the questions from. Just gonna point out that some. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, it was just a quick disconnect. And yeah, so would you like to come back to where you were?
I think maybe the last thing I said was, as technology continues to improve, as I was able to see just 5-6 years ago, if video continues to be better and our devices continue to be better, that connection will only not force us, but inspire us as creators to get to look at things as a community building, as who are your trusted places of going to? Where do you love to hang out? Because you just you feel not only seen and heard, but that your host, your creator, oh my goodness, is telling you, understands that about the community, right? It's one thing to tune into something where you're not going to get that return, but it's another thing to say, yeah, we're a whole room of friends.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of comments towards our wrap-up time. Ethan says, Mia, what's the best way to get in touch with you? I work for a progressive political nonprofit in Colorado and would love to connect. Yeah, absolutely. You can find Mia on LinkedIn. This is actually how I connected with her originally. So you can just find her as Mia Fermindoza at Friends of Bernie Sanders. I also wanted to display the website, berniesanders.com. That's where you can see a lot of Mia's work. A lot of live streaming is going there. You can definitely see specifically what they did in the past, as well as connect with other team members there. That's a great question. I see that there, and Mia is also sharing her Twitter account and in Instagram, and I'm going to display it in just a second. I'm seeing Chris is saying live streaming is sure to play a huge role moving forward. Agree, couldn't agree more. And here comes our caption for Mia's Twitter or Instagram. Feel free to find her there and connect with her. Absolutely. So yeah, there are a couple more comments here. Anastasia is saying any tips when this happens in live streams as well. I'm assuming you're talking about our little hiccup moment there. My tip is just, keep going. This is live video, right? You can't just stop everything, and the connection will probably come back. And my go-to suggestion is just go to the community, go to the chat, respond, acknowledge people. And then if your guest was disconnected for just a second, that's a great way to give them that little time to get back to us and continue the conversation, and then just keep moving from where you left off. Anthony says, fully agree. You cannot be a pro without the pain. So true. And actually, yeah, any industry, any work, anything you do. It is here to stay for any community engagement. Talking about live streaming, Anthony, so true. Couldn't agree more. Mia, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for connecting with us and for sharing your expertise about live streaming political campaigns, your little insights and how it feels, and to work with Bernie Sanders and this amazing results you guys were able to achieve. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Anya. Love your work and keep it up. Thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you. Thanks again. And thank you a lot for all these community members who showed up today. Thank you so very much, folks, for showing up, for asking your questions, for commenting. We love to have this conversation open. Feel free to add more comments to our chat, to our comments in the future. I like to come back and respond if you have any other technical questions or any specific questions for me about Restream. I'm your host, Anya, here with Restream team in Austin, Texas. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your week. And thanks for tuning in. I'll see you soon in a couple of weeks for the next episode. Bye.